In today's video, you're going to learn how to get the most out of attending class. Specifically, you'll learn significantly how to retain what is taught in your classes even months later. This is going to save you many hours of studying. It's going to help you get better grades, especially on your midterms and your finals. And it's also going to help you participate and contribute more towards your classes. If you need more information, please email us at contact@theartofbeingsmart. Okay, let's take a look at what I taught my students just a few days ago.
Okay, so the question is how you have a 3-hour class, and then the question is how can you find out the important parts of the class through filtering and focusing and all that stuff. Okay, so basically your question is how do you suck the juice out of that class, right? Okay, so a couple of things you can do, and again we will go into more detail about this later, but one of the best ways to do it is to look at your class, going to class, as if it's a 3-step process, okay? And in fact, what I am trying to say is that think of it as a 3-step process with attending class as being the second step of that 3-step process, okay? So that means that you would need to do something prior to the class, you would need to do something during the class, and you would need to do something after the class. So if you can think of attending class in that framework, then what happens is you can really get the most out of the class. So basically, here's a good way to look at it. So most students, when they attend class, let's describe the average student going to class. And tell me if I'm wrong, but basically, and when I was a student, the average student would not do anything before class. They would just come to class, and then they would just assume that they're going to be taught some stuff. And then after they're taught some stuff, then they just go ahead and then they work on other things that they need to do. Is that pretty close to what most students do? You guys would agree? Yeah? So that is a recipe for disaster. And it's a recipe for disaster is because you're not using your mind the way it should be used. And unfortunately, like I said, none of us have been taught how to do this. So basically what you want to do is you want to break it down into 3 steps. So most students, what they do is when they attend class, they look at it as if it's a 1-step process. Okay, you attend the class and that's great. I'm a good student. I attend the class. Problem is when they're in the class, they don't really know what to do. And they got to do something before it and after it. So what I would suggest you do is before you come to class, understand that you need to somehow, you got to prepare, okay? You got to prepare a little bit. Now, if you were an athlete and you were going to play a big game, okay, and let's say, I don't know, let's say you're a hockey player, okay, and you're about to play a big game, if you just show for the game, how well do you think you'd play? You would not play very well. Why would you not play well? You're there on time for the game. Like, why would you not play well? You're not warmed up. You're not warmed up, probably physically not warmed up, but even mentally you're not warmed up. So you don't even know what, let's say if you're a goal scorer, you don't even know where you should try to shoot on net because you weren't there to get familiar with what is going to happen during the game. And physically you wouldn't be ready. Why? Because for you not to be physically warmed up and to stretch and all that stuff and then go play a game, there's a very good chance of injury. But more than that, you probably would not be able to keep up with the rest of the players who have already warmed up and already got their blood pumping and all that kind of stuff. So it would take you a while. So maybe halfway through the first period, you finally get your legs going. But by that time, you've maybe cost your team a couple of goals because you're not playing your position well. Okay? Does that make sense? So what you want to do is think of your class as if you're going to play the sport. So what you do is before you go to class, you got to prepare. Just like you're going to be playing a sport, you got to prepare for that sport. In class, what you want to do is you want to do something called your preview. Okay? So it's called a preview. And these are the terms I call Like, these are the terms that I've created because it makes sense. It's a preview. So basically, what is a preview? A preview is your ability to get familiar with the material. That's all you're doing. So before you come to class, what you should do is try to get familiar with the material. And when I say get familiar with the material, some students take it to the next level, and what they do is they read everything and they try to memorize everything that is going to be discussed in that class. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just getting familiar with the terms and the concepts and the main objective of that class. That can really only take you about 10 minutes. But that 10 minutes, if you can spend it effectively, can really help you when you attend the class. Okay, so your goal when you're entering the class is to become familiar with that material. Hopefully I spelt it right. And when you're becoming familiar, what you're also doing is you're creating curiosity or interest. How many people here perform better when they're interested in the material? So 100% of the class. Why? Because you are now going into the class and you feel like you want to learn that material. So if you feel like you want to learn it when you're in the class, it's easier to learn. That's exactly what you're doing in the preview. You're creating curiosity or interest about what is going to be addressed in the class. And the way you do that is by paying attention to certain things like what is the objective of the class. Maybe you skim through the chapters, you look at the pictures, maybe there's some certain terminology that you're not aware of, but you've just skimmed it over. Maybe there's a couple of questions in the back of the book that you read, you don't know how to answer them, but that's okay. The point is, when you're getting familiar with that material, it's kind of like you're opening up your learning cells and you're getting them ready to allow the information in. Does that make sense? So that's kind of your intention. Now, the next part is going to sound really funny when I say this. So you've previewed and now you've come to class. Most students, when they come to class, what is their objective? How many people think that their objective to come to class is to learn? Okay, just, put your hands up high. Yeah, so 98% or 99% of the class says that when you come to class, your objective is to learn. What if I told you that's not your objective? What if I told you you should never come to class to learn? I say it a little bit for impact, but the reality is you should never come to class to learn. So if you don't come to class to learn, what do you think you should come to class to do? No. If you don't, you kind of said it. You said it in the question. If you don't come to class to learn, what should you be coming to class to do? Close. I mean, we already talked about it. You already know the answer to this. Yeah. Yeah. Listen to do what? Bingo. When you come to class, you should not come to learn. What you want to do is you want to pay attention to what is valuable and what is not valuable. Does that make sense? Because if you're going to come to class and you're going to learn everything that's being thrown out at you, there's a very good chance, like the student said, that you're going to be writing down every little piece of information. But is every little piece of information important in the class? It's not. If I'm talking to you about where I just bought my shoes and I talk to you about what happened over the weekend and all this kind of stuff, you should not be writing that stuff down. Believe it or not, some students do. In the same way, if I am talking about a concept, but I'm giving you the history of the concept, yeah, maybe you can write down the history of the concept, but what's the real value? The real value is the concept, isn't it? Right? If you're learning about the theory of relativity, and I tell you a little bit about Einstein's history, is knowing about Einstein's history as important as actually learning the concept of the theory of relativity? Not really. But Einstein's history or his background is just giving you a preamble as to having a better understanding of the main concept being taught. Does that make sense? So when you come to class and your intention is, I want to learn everything, it's great, and I admire you for your work ethic, but are you going to be tested on everything that you write down?
No.
You can't. It's impossible for you to get tested on everything that you write down. And why is it impossible for you to get tested on everything you write down? Why is it impossible? Sorry? Absolutely. How long is your exam, usually? Hour, 20 minutes if you're in this course. But let's say it's a 3-hour class, okay? 3-hour class, and how many sections and how many classes have you attended? Probably, if it's your final exam, probably 4 months of classes. So how can you get tested on 4 months of information in 3 hours? You just have to be able to pick out the important pieces and be able to explain them well. Does that make sense? So if you come to class to learn, it's very counterintuitive, and people will think you're nuts when you tell them, hey, I don't go to class to learn, and that's why I'm getting a 4.0. They'll think you're mad, first of all. But the reality is that if you are coming to class to learn, you're making a mistake. Okay? What you want to do is you want to come to class, but your job is to filter. And when I say filter, you're paying attention to what's valuable and what's not valuable. Make sense? Okay, now you filtered information, and I just told you that you come to class, but you should not come to class to learn. So, when should you actually do the learning? Because eventually you will need to learn the material, will you not? Right? You will. Yes, Isabel.
Once you recognize like what's important after the class.
Exactly. Exactly. So then what you do is you have to do something after the class. Okay. Did you notice I have like the green, like the traffic light, and then the red for like after the traffic light? I just didn't have orange. That's the problem. Okay, so you want to review. Okay? Your review is where the learning happens. So this is where you actually start to learn. But if you have been able to filter information correctly, okay, if you have been able to filter information correctly, how long do you think this will take you? How long do you think it'll take you? Probably won't take you very long. Why do you think it won't take you very long? When I say it won't take you long, we're looking probably a good approximation would probably be half the length of your regular class. So let's say your class, just for the sake of argument, is about 1 hour. Your review time probably will be around half an hour, maybe 35 minutes, maybe 40 max. Why? Yeah. Say it again. You've already heard it? Yeah, that's one. That's one reason. Yeah.
You're only paying attention to the important parts of it.
High five. Bang. You've paid attention to what's valuable. So if you've spent an hour in the classroom, you have filtered out, you've taken out the juice, right? You've taken out the gold from the class. So when you take out the gold from the class, there's only a few nuggets of gold. So when you've got those nuggets of gold, then what happens is, let's use a different color. Then what happens is the information that's coming into the review is much less. And if it's less information, you spend less time learning. The average student, they're not going to preview, they're not going to review, they're going to come to class and going to try and learn it all. What happens to them when they start studying for finals?
They have to relearn everything.
They got to relearn everything, but how do they know what's important and what's not? They don't. So, because they don't know what's valuable and what's not important, they end up having to learn the entire course probably in about a week or two. And then is that a good recipe for success?
No.
It's a recipe for disaster, to be honest. Okay, so have I helped you at all? Okay, so the answer that I would give you is before you attend class, try to get familiar. When you're in the classroom, oh, by the way, when you are previewing for this material, okay, how do you think this is going to help you here? Or can it? When you're previewing, can it help you? As I tie my shoe. Yeah, go ahead.
You'll be able to contribute to class discussions.
Yeah, you'll be able to contribute, absolutely. So if you're contributing, it'll help with your learning. but it actually does something else for you. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be able to come with your questions if you don't understand any concept.
Bingo. You'll be able to come with your questions, and when you come with your questions, all those challenges you had not getting it are being answered for you in the class. So you're getting a lot more value out of the class. Now, if you come to the class with questions, what do you think your retention is going to be like when these questions are being answered? Do you think your retention will go up? Absolutely. Why? Because you're coming with the intention to have questions answered. Because you're coming to the class with curiosity and interest. So you absorb it much better. You come to the class, you start to pick things up faster. You get to know what's valuable, what's not. You've got way more retention and understanding in the class. When that's done, then what you do is you start to review the important information, but it won't be that much because you've already picked out certain nuggets, and then you learn it. And then I'll show you what to do, how to learn it effectively. But if you can get this system down pat and start looking at your class as if it's attending class a 3-step process, you'll see magic start to happen. Because when you start reviewing, and by the way, when you review, if you start reviewing within 24 hours, your mind starts to function in the way it has always been meant to function. Why do you think 24 hours is an important timeline for you? Why do you think I put in 24 hours? What's the big deal?
Because it's probably harder to retain information after 24 hours when you go to sleep.
Yeah. So yeah, very close. I would say you're 95% there. So it's very hard to retain information after, but there's another reason. Yes?
Like the memory's still fresh. You remember
Bingo.
it.
Yeah.
It's better to just get on it.
Yeah, because what happens is you've just got it, and if you don't do anything with it, you're just going to lose it. Remember, your mind is like a muscle. Okay? If you're going to go to the gym once, what's going to happen to the muscle that you potentially created if you just go once? It's going to get sore, but what do you think you'll grow the muscle?
Well, it'll grow actually,
If you keep going, but if you don't,
it's nothing's gonna happen.
yeah, you're going to be like, the gym sucks, nothing happened. It's like coming to class, I didn't learn anything. Okay, well, you have to be able to do something with that information for yourself to learn effectively. Okay, because remember, if you think of your mind like the muscle, then what will happen is then you'll have to do something with the information. Just like when you're going to the gym, if you just kind of pick up the weights one day and that's all you do, you'll never grow the muscle. So when you come to class, you have to do something with the information. Okay? So if you can, and we're going to talk a lot about this kind of stuff later on, but this was a very good question because this will be like your first intro to it. And then when we actually go through it, you'll see how everything kind of works together. Okay. So good question. Thank you.